How was the kid able to get their hands on the tool of choice? Great question. Surprisingly easy to answer, and it will show you just how easy it would be to solve the situation that we're in. Was this kid also able to get a hold of this tool? Huh. Irresponsible parents. That's how. This is where their whole pro-life bullshit just falls apart and shows them as the forced birthers that they actually are. Because if they gave a shit about the life, they would give a shit from the womb to the tomb, and keeping them safe from every point in between those two incidences. But when it comes to that precious Second Amendment of theirs that they haven't actually read, nor do they understand, topped with them being shown for the last 24 years that you don't have to take any personal responsibility whatsoever for your kids' actions when they take said tool from your house or from grandma's house. Isn't it funny that every single weapon used, I do believe, I could be wrong on this, but if I am wrong, the vast majority of the weapons that have been used, let's just put it at that, the vast majority of the weapons that were used in these mass unalivings, most especially the mass school pew-pewings that we have seen, these weapons have been obtained legally. Meaning the background check was passed. But the GOP, that used to be, like I said, the party for personal responsibility, but is now the party of you can't fucking tell me what to do, has decided that since Columbine, that when those parents were not charged for their children's actions, that was the green light they needed to no longer be parents, to no longer do their job. The ability to put the blame on anybody else but your own failures. I mean, these parents oftentimes are parents because they made a mistake. Usually started out as parents at very young ages prior to the brain being completely developed to be able to make an actual decision on whether they wanted to be pregnant, whether they wanted to actually be a parent. They sit there and say, well, just because I made a mistake or just because a pregnancy happened this way doesn't mean the child should have to suffer for your bad choices. However, the child will suffer because it's unwanted. When you don't want the job, you usually don't do a very good job at it. So there's that. You see, I come from a time of duty to retreat. Meaning that, yes, you could protect yourself and your family if you had no other choice, but that you at least tried to retreat first, because possessions can be replaced, human lives cannot. Things like securing your weapons was just common sense, not a political talking point. But all of those years from Columbine until just recently, when these parents were actually charged for their neglect, parents have been getting away with it. Been getting away with bringing these dangerous tools that have one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to unalive whatever is on the other end of it. They have been allowed to bring these home unchecked with a simple background check, and that's it. No knowing, no knowledge if they're actually using them or properly securing them out of the hands of their underdeveloped child. No, see, they say, if I raise my children with these tools, and if I teach them how to use these tools, and if I teach them safety with these tools, it will never be my child that does it. However, I will say again, the vast majority of school pew-pewings, most especially, but all of the pew-pewings, the mass pew-pewings, are done by white males that obtained the weapon legally. They got it from the parents that didn't want to do the fucking job, didn't want to child-proof their home, thought for sure that they did all the right things, but turns out they didn't. And oftentimes these parents ignore the constant signs, they ignore the constant advice from the teachers, they ignore all of that their child has some sort of mental issue. The teachers can only do so much. And parents, especially down here, put way too much responsibility on the school system to raise their children instead of educate them, when it's the parents' job to raise them. They have bent themselves over into pretzels, all for a misunderstanding of the 2A, okay, that never really and truly mandated that civilians could have weaponry in their home. That wasn't actually until I think I will have to check with my friend Attorney Dye. I think she said 2010 is when we got that one. But that having these kinds of tools wasn't always a guaranteed right in the houses and the homes and the hands of civilians. They forget or blow right past the well-regulated part of that straight into shall not be infringed. And they don't want your nose in it. How anyone could say, you can have this tool when you pry it from my cold, unalived hands, but not care one bit about the cold, unalived, innocent children. No, they think it's just acceptable death for their Second Amendment right. The reason that kid was able to get his hands on that is because every single solitary adult that entered into his life failed him, starting with his parents. Luckily, they were made an example of, I do believe, and they are sitting in prison for their neglect of their child. But hey, that right to the 2A, right? Dear God. But yeah, that's how. Also wanted to add this little factoid, as it were. Did you know that the rate of crime drastically started to be reduced starting in 1974 when Roe was passed? Yeah, the crime rate has steadily gone down. Imagine how farther it could go down if it were still in place.